This is the last interactive activity of our PhD School Day 2 event today. And we do have our panel discussion themed around the short title, Choose Your Own Adventure, Research Careers in Industry. I think this is a perfect theme for our attending PhD cohorts, right? Because based on all the information we have had about you and all your presentations and posters, we know that many of you are either working in an R&D setting for your research project or have a career aspiration to become a researcher and developer in the industry setting. So this also motivates us to invite three industry panelists today to share their own experience with research career development in industry and possibly give us some very insightful advice on how can we possibly maximize the PhD candidates and internship opportunities and every other possible opportunities we can possibly have to maximize your chance for developing yourself into a successful R&D researchers in an industry setting. So I will run the session in this way. So I'm going to introduce the three panelists one by one, and also I will give each of you some time to do a quick self-introduction as well. I'm going to start the session by asking some warm-up questions. So we are going to have some general discussions. And also questions from the audience are always welcome as the follow-ups to my warm-up questions. That's going to last for about 30-40 minutes. And for the last 20-30 minutes, we are going to open up the entire floor to accept all sorts of different questions from all our attendees. And this is when we can have more in-depth discussions and when we can get more nuanced advice from all our panelists today to your specific questions. So now let's get started. Please allow me to introduce our first panelist. So we have Jacqueline Condon. She is the Group General Manager for Strategy and Governance at Technology One. So Jacqueline has a strong reputation as an innovative product and technology leader, developed over her more than 25 years in this space. She's passionate about the power we have to change the world, both professionally and in our personal lives. At Technology One, Jacqueline leads the strategy and governance function with the product and the technology division, R&D, including responsibility for enterprise architecture, security and compliance, and user experience across the Technology One ERP. Before joining Technology One, Jacqueline was head of product for a supply chain transparency startup and held roles including executive for strategy, performance, and operations, and CTO at CoreLogic International, responsible for delivery across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. That's a very long profile, so very, very impressive at the same time. And Jacqueline's accolades are very, very impressive, including having won a Women in Product Award for Innovative Product Management. She holds a Master of Business Administration, aka MBA, from the Australian Graduate School of Management. And she firmly believes that a great team and a compelling story are key to creating market-leading solutions. Previous colleagues would say she has a knack for translating technical things and explaining them in a way that makes sense to everyone. I think this is the ultimate skill we are all after in an R&D setting. So let's welcome Jacqueline. Do you want to say something about yourself? Jacqueline?
I think you've covered quite a bit about my history. I don't know what else you want to know about me. So I think I was interested to be invited today. I'm keen to know what you're all interested in hearing, so I welcome any questions in that session later on. I think for me, the piece that I am really passionate about is storytelling. So I think, I come from a technical background. I have half a degree in technology. You can explore that at your will. But I think for me, often it is about connecting with people. So my experience is that to get things done in a workplace is actually about connecting with other people. And yeah, there might be big technical challenges that you have, but a lot of my work has been around how do I actually connect people in an organisation and rally them behind something that we're trying to do. There's always lots of reasons we can't do it. That could be technical, but often they're not. So yeah, that's probably what drives me each day, is working with great people and teams to try and actually achieve outcomes and get over whatever those hurdles are to achieve them. Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jacqueline. So please allow me to introduce our second panelist, Lawrence Kuss. So Lawrence is the founder of ChatStat, and he's also the managing director of this company. And this company, ChatStat, is an AI platform dedicated to protecting youth mental health from online risks like the cyberbullying and self-harm. And under Lawrence's leadership, ChatStat has supported over 28,000 young Australians and recently expanded into government partnerships to address workplace psychological hazards. That's great achievement. And this year, even greater achievement coming, he was named the Social Traders Social Enterprise Pioneer of the Year. So let's welcome Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Rocky. And yes, we just got back yesterday from receiving that award from Social Traders for the Social Enterprise of the Year. So yeah, really exciting time, and it's great to see that a lot of the work that we're doing to really use technology to make an impact in the world is being recognized, because you hear so many of the negative things about AI and technology, but there is a lot of good that can actually come out of it. So really trying to think about how we can be using a lot of the research that we're doing and the technology that we're using to make an impact. And so I think that's really important for us to be keeping in the back of our minds. Not so long ago, I was in the same chair as you. So ChatStat's journey started back in 2021 when I was doing my PhD here at the University of Queensland. I have a niece who has Down syndrome, and she is being pretty severely cyberbullied. And I was, in addition to doing my PhD, I was also teaching a course here. And it just so happened that one of the course that I was teaching, we had Australia's leading social media safety consultant. And so I engaged with Kira after the course finished to understand some of the problems that schools are having and that parents are having, and how we could use technology to address those concerns in a better way. And from there, ChatStat was born. And from there, I reached out to a number of leading researchers from all around the world, getting to understand some of the problems that researchers come across, that parents have, that children have, and use that technology, use that research that they're doing to improve our algorithms and be able to actually make a positive impact in the world. And engaging with people like Rocky and Martin and some of the others here at UQ, as well as other organizations around the world, it's really been helpful for us. And I thank you for your time and your help, Rocky.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for coming and supporting our PhD school event. And I think you have also beaten my algorithm for hate speech detection, right? Because you have benchmarked my algorithm and beat it.
I don't want to. I don't want to. Yeah, we'll talk. I don't. I think that's your algorithm.
Yeah. So with that, let's move on to Julian, our third panelist. So Dr. Julian Montel, he is the manager of applied science in Amazon. And he leads the recommender systems team at Amazon Machine Learning Australia. And before that, he was a senior scientist at Amazon Machine Learning, a research scientist at AWS Networking, and a research staff member at IBM Research. And way earlier, a postdoctoral researcher at Trinity College Dublin, and a visiting researcher at University of California at Berkeley. And Julian has authored over 50 papers and 20 patents in various different fields of research, including recommender systems, transportation, machine learning, and control, and has contributed to the launch of dozens of machine learning systems at Amazon, AWS, and IBM. And Julian holds a PhD in applied mathematics from University of Lyon in France. Let's welcome Julian.
Thank you, Rocky. Yeah, so it's you read thousands, but it's more dozens, right, of ML systems, that we deployed in production systems across, at IBM, Amazon, AWS during my experience as a scientist in those companies. So I've been in R&D for 8 years now, and I had an academic, I have an academic background, so I did PhD and then postdoc. And I've traveled a bit, right? I studied in France, and I moved to Ireland. I was in Dublin for 6 years, and I've been in Queensland for now 4 years. My wife is Australian. I'm happy to be here. I would be keen to answer any questions you have. And we try to, at Amazon Machine Learning, we try to work more closely with universities. We have internship programs. We hire. We have 2 machine learning teams in Australia, one on computer vision, one on recommender system. I'm leading the recommender system team, and we hire Australian PhDs and international PhDs, right? As many as we can, right? We try to get headcount for that, yeah. So thank you, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julian. So let's welcome all 3 panelists. So please allow me to start with a very, very simple question. I think this is relevant to all of you 3 and also relevant to all our HDR cohort. So I think based on your business context, so why do you think research is playing an important role to your day-to-day business?
I'll start then. Yeah, so, I worked in healthcare, in automotive, now I work in recommender systems. We always work closely with customers. And recommender systems, of course, it's about making money, for Amazon, having people buying more products and so on. But there are many, problems on fairness, right, of the recommendations. Fairness for the sellers, right? Selling products in the Amazon ecosystems, but fairness for customers as well. We don't want recommendation to be, biased towards certain customer groups. So we have those challenges, right? That are difficult challenges, right? And that we try to address on our, day-to-day jobs. It's easy to, it's not easy, but it's one thing to optimize for, click-through rate metrics, and try to, see the recommender systems engines as, clickbait engines, right? But in fact, it's not like that. We are optimizing for many conflicting objectives, and customer seller fairness are part of that. So and we worked. I think the feedback loop with the customer is important at Amazon, right? It's the customer obsession is something that is important as a leadership principle in the company. And previously I worked in healthcare. Healthcare was a nice collaboration. We were working on spinal cord stimulator with Boston Scientific in the US. For patients with chronic pains, and it's so easy to do things wrong, right? And so with the control algorithm we are designing at that point, right, we had clinical studies and so on, and it required very precise mathematics. So it was very pleasant, right, to design theoretical algorithms that were having a positive effect on customers, right? And in my career, I was lucky enough to be working in on the theory and seeing the application of the theoretical algorithm we designed for the people, right? So yeah, that's my experience, my journey with applied science.
Thank you, Julian.
So research and engagement with the research community is hugely important to ChatStat. So we're a technology-led organization, and so being able to stay ahead of the technology curve is highly important to us. So what that means is engaging with researchers such as yourselves to understand what's actually happening. What are the latest learnings? What's coming out that we need to stay ahead of? So, we're AI before everybody became AI, except before then, we're using terms like machine learning, natural language processing, sentiment analysis. Now we just sort of have to use the catch-all term AI because that's what everybody understands, and it's become diluted a little bit because everybody says AI, and I think most people are just sort of have an API going into OpenAI or something like that. But anyways, and that's beside the point. But for us really engaging with you to understand what's actually happening, what it is that is going to be leading the next wave of things, so that we're able to stay ahead of the curve, so that we're a technology startup. So that's one of the things that we can take advantage of, is that we're able to move swiftly. And because we can move swiftly, it's important for us to have an understanding of what's actually happening there in the research community, what's the latest that's coming out, and what's going to be leading the next wave of change. How are we able to utilize these findings to make a better impact on the world? Because that's what our drive is to actually make that impact in the world, and looking to you as researchers to help us make that impact. Thank you.
I think I've actually forgotten the question by this point, but I'll go with the flow. I'm just joking.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe I'll answer it from a slightly different perspective. So I agree that I guess a lot of my role is often about making connections with what we're trying to do in our business with our customers. And most of the businesses that I've worked in have had quite strong relationships with governments. I.e. whether the government is an actual end customer, or we're servicing government. So Technology One has a really large swathe of customers who are in the government space or in the public sector space generally. And similarly with another company I worked at, I was using an example before, some of the models that we developed around property data actually informed the Reserve Bank of Australia's monetary policy. So they're quite significant kind of impacts that we're sort of having on decision making that affects everybody, because it affects the interest rates that we all pay if we have loans or bank accounts. So I think for me, there's one side, which is the technology side, which is what's actually evolving and what can we look forward at and see, and what do we need to do to make sure that we can take advantage of that from a commercial sense, or solve a new problem that we couldn't solve easily before. But I think it's also actually it's a bit strange, but coming at it from the economic perspective of influencing government policy and influencing regulation around it. And so that that research for us is a really big thing, to be able to go back to governments and say, look, when you're looking at setting policy, for example, I look after cybersecurity at my organisation, and if we're looking at AI ML governance, what's going on in that space that we need to actually really draw on the research community to help influence, because the world is moving faster than the government is, but researchers are actually often out there doing things and thinking of them, quite far ahead. So how do we come up with mental models that allow people to try and understand a future that's very difficult to understand when they're developing policy or, guidelines? That's probably one of the key things that I see.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think I had one impression from Raqueline's self-introduction, because you said your belief is that a good team and a good story is the key to building success, building market-leading products, right? So I believe for all our panelists, your team definitely have some core members that come with a research background, right? So can you elaborate on a little bit? So what is your experience working with people from such research background, and so what is the best possible takeaway from this kind of experience, and where do you see the improvements could be?
Is the question, how have we worked effectively with people with strong research backgrounds, and how could that change? Can you say it a different way, Rocky? Is that okay?
Yeah, so how do you find, working with someone from a research background?
Yeah, sure. If I'm honest, I often don't work with people with huge research backgrounds. They might be in teams that I'm working with. So for me, it's usually about having a cross-functional team. Where I've seen it work best is when you've got actually some people who might have a very strong research background and actually potentially maybe have got some quite recent research, deep research background, and they are using innovative techniques and approaches to something. That's one of the key strengths that often that they can bring to shake up a team, for example. They can come in and say, hey, this is what we've been doing in a research setting. Have you thought about, approaching this problem from a different perspective, either technically or non-technically? That's probably one thing. But I think I'd say that where I've seen it work really well is where you've actually got that multidisciplinary team, where you've got some people with a strong research background and some people with the complete opposite, like almost an autodidactic kind of approach where they've learned completely on the job, or they've come from a really strong industry background and knowledge and moved into, a role, but they might not have any training at all. And actually often that pairing is really, really interesting if you can get it to work.
Thank you, Ricklene. And I definitely agree with your comment about being able to leverage researchers' unique insights that they're able to bring. That's highly important for us because of the work that we do is constantly evolving. So having those researcher engagements that they're able to bring these new insights to us that we wouldn't have had otherwise. We get focused far too often on the business processes that we don't necessarily have time to always be staying up to date with the latest research that's happening. And that's why we engage with people like Rocky and people like you to be able to help us stay ahead of these things, because as well-intentioned as we might be, and I'm sure all of us here are well-intentioned, we don't necessarily always have the time to be able to be doing that. And so we'll end up getting too focused and torn on to the sales side or the marketing side or whatever area it is that we might be focused on. But at the end of the day, it really comes back to being able to understand what's happening, what the challenges are, and what's going to be leading the way forward in the future. And we look to you to be able to help us with that.
Yeah, so in my team we are only PhDs. We only researchers, right? And we do partner with external teams, so product management and software engineering, to bring our solutions to production. And product management comes with feature requests, and we iterate with them on the best features to bring to customers. And software developers, we worked on timelines to bring our solution to production, and we work with them. We on the code base to bring the PyTorch package, the PyTorch Docker image to production, right? So working with researchers is a blessing, right? It's been you're always challenged, and there is always, I think everybody, right, has a deep intellectual curiosity, and working in R&D for me has been great all the time. Of course, as you know, right, people have egos, so you have to deal with that sometimes, but that's good, right? It actually, I think if dealt with properly, it fosters innovation in some ways, right? So. And of course, the way you manage a team of scientists is not people are very highly capable. They like to be trusted. They don't want to see micromanagement, and they did PhDs, right? So they are used to, they did thesis, right? They are used to solving problem by themselves, right? So I think trusting people around, and involving them as well, like making them interested in the actual product or the actual algorithm. I think we do work faster when we are 2 or 3 compared to if you're on your own, right? And we see that with papers. Publishing papers is much more demanding than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Now they ask for so many baselines, and the field is evolving so fast, right? That you between the time you actually submit the paper and the time it is published, you have to implement 3 or 4 more baselines, right? So I think you need collaborative culture to achieve publication, to achieve good products, and yeah, and it's yeah, I think I said it all. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much for the comments. So getting back to the theme of our entire training center. So the full name of our research center is called Industrial Transformation and Training Center. So industrial transformation is definitely lying at the central of the entire HDR training program. But people always have a belief that research you see in publications, it's usually miles away from real-world products, right? I think probably you all have had some agreements or disagreements with this claim, right? So just wondering, is there any moment in your career that let you realize, okay, this is so challenging to actually put a research into practice? So is there any moment like this?
Yeah, great question, Rocky. So trying to put research into practice, I guess, yeah, that was always one of the key things that was very important to me when I was doing my PhD research. So my former PhD supervisor was actually up here earlier today, Tim Castell, and he's very much, putting things into practice, actually focusing on the application side of things. So I think that's probably why I chose to pause my PhD research and continue on with Chatstead, is because just being able to, I saw that the ability to make that impact and be able to apply some of the research that I was doing in an immediate effect. And I think that as researchers, that's probably something that we should always be keeping a focus on, is how can we actually be applying the research? What difference is it going to make in the world? Not just doing things because it seems interesting to us, but doing things because we know that it's actually going to make a difference. And looking at what the business case scenario around that would be. So one of the sort of going back slightly to the previous question, there's lots of benefits to working with researchers. The one downside is researchers can sometimes get too much into the research space. And especially as a small business, we always have to be considering the business case as well. So thinking about the business case along with the research case, and if you can find a way to actually combine both of those, that's an amazing research project that you have. And so really try to be mindful of that, I think is important for me as a researcher. Depending upon what research you're doing, that may be more or less relevant to you, but that's what we always try to focus on as an organization, is trying to blend both of those and make sure that the researchers that we're working with are highly engaged with the organization. So we don't like to silo knowledge in any one area. We're a small organization, so we're able to, we're not Tech One or Amazon where information might get siloed more easily. We're able to sort of have all the team members working with each other, so the researchers are well aware of everything that's happening within the organization. And as researchers, I would suggest that if ever you do find yourself like wondering, okay, what is the point of what I'm doing? Reach out to your manager, reach out to whoever it is that you're working with, because I'm sure that they'd be willing to help you. And so, it will really help spur you on in the research that you're doing to understand what you're helping with within the organization. So, yeah, please, be mindful of what the business wants from your research and how that will benefit, and be mindful also of what you're going to be benefiting from yourself. And so I'll always reach out to the organizations and ask them to give you a better idea of what it is that you're accomplishing.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think I was trying to come up with a specific example, and I came up with one. I'm trying to work out how I can tell you without exposing any secrets. So there was something as an example of something that kind of went to a grinding halt very quickly. We were working on a program of work somewhere that I worked previously, and it was a collaboration between our business and a very large multinational business and some researchers. and the multinational was providing some of the funding to conduct the research. We needed some equipment and things like that, which was pretty expensive at the time. And one of the reasons it was really successful, the first round of research proved that there was some viability in this idea that we were pursuing, and everyone was really excited about the prospect of this thing going ahead. We were like, great, there's this really big real-world problem that costs this very large company a lot of money and to solve, and we think we might have a way to help automate and solve that through a technological solution. It was a combination of physical hardware and software. So that's often also a very difficult challenge to solve when you've got physical things to solve with. The second round, when we started to go ahead, and we actually couldn't agree on what the scope would be. And I think the challenge in that example is lots of reasons it didn't go ahead. But for me, one of the challenges is often where is the technical readiness? So, you know, there's an adoption risk, not just from the can we technically do it, but then how quickly could we scale it? So the example that we had, it was actually going to be really difficult to scale the solution from a hardware perspective to the speed and scale that was required in production in the time frame that was needed, if that makes sense. And so I think for them it was too big a leap of faith to kind of keep going down an investment path. And that's where you can sort of see it fail. So I think for me that's part of that is around how do you manage expectations on all sides of what you're trying to get out of that sort of research and when, and is everyone aligned on, you know, the risks and the opportunities. And I think trying to make, you know, what we tried to do was break it into smaller pieces. So could we say, you know, like, sure, the long-term goal is here, but in the interim stages, can we craft some outcomes that will actually result in tangible benefits in the medium term, not just in the long term? So that's probably one example.
Yeah. Thanks, Erkan.
Yes, so I can think of a few examples where there could be a disconnection between the things the algorithms we produce and what we can actually bring to production. So, yeah, I mean, I think we are never short of problems in the industry, right? And some fields, some practical questions are a bit underinvested sometimes. So if I take the topic of recommender systems, right, and we have very few public data sets available in the literature, right? So you have Netflix price data set, you have Movieland's series of data sets. And and basically, you know, they've been available for 15 years now, and if not more, and people are overfitted to those data sets, right? So you have research papers showing very good accuracy, you know, recall metrics and so on, but it's very hard to beat, right? So when we, you know, from the Amazon angle, from the Amazon perspective, we have to scale the solution. We want to leverage state-of-the-art algorithms, but we have to scale the existing solutions, the existing algorithms to millions of products and millions of customers, right? And we find out that, you know, most algorithms proposed in the literature, which claim, you know, to be state-of-the-art and beating other algorithms, they don't scale, right, to our systems. So yeah, we have to make them scale. One way is to, you know, not use IDs, right? Maybe use semantic IDs, or just get rid of IDs and use embeddings instead. And then we can work with similar loss functions, but we have to do this analysis with the scale that we have at Amazon, right? So that's one. And second thing is, so scale is one. Second is infrastructure, right? So infrastructure comes readiness, right? Comes with constraints. So in some system, I'm thinking, for instance, right, online convex optimization research, which is, I did a little bit of this work when I was in Dublin. It's a very fascinating field, but it comes with some assumption, right, that you have convex function, and you have a online feedback mechanism. And the industry, we often deal with batch feedback mechanism, right? So we don't do reinforcement learning, we do batch reinforcement learning, and it means your regret analysis that you did for the, you know, real-time feedback loop being available is not valid anymore, right? So you may need to develop theory to verify that the algorithm you borrow in the real-time feedback situation actually is also provide nice guarantees as well in the batch feedback configuration. So these kind of new problems are being triggered by the practical constraints we have. And yeah, sure, sometimes there are disconnects. Sometimes I remember I made a couple of mistakes in my career, right, where I overcomplicated the solutions. I think one of them was when I sold to business teams. I was working at IBM Research, and we were doing traffic predictions at city scale, and we were doing route prediction as well for fleet management, right? So many for insurance companies, for fleet management companies, and so we did push a few microservices that were working fine: traffic prediction, vehicle routing. And I had this idea, that sometimes the traffic prediction fails, right, in the presence of non-recurrent events, typically accidents, right? So why not? I was thinking, why not plugging a physical model into, once you have an accident, you can go back to fluid dynamics, right, and have a CFD model propagating the perturbation onto the network, right? But then in practice, it's very hard to implement because you don't have the actual number of lanes at intersections, and you actually sometimes have some, bad metadata about the route, the network itself, right? So basically, your network propagation model fails, not because the mathematical model is wrong, but just because the data you have, the network data you have, is not accurate enough for it to work, right? So I lost a few months on this, and yeah, that happens, right? And you have to accept that it won't work and do something else, right? And I have other examples, but yeah, it's I think, yeah, you learn to de-risk over time, right? And when you're fresh out of PhD, you try to maybe sometimes you over-index on the complicated solution because it can lead to a paper. But yeah, that's. I think we have to start simple and iterate, and complicated. Everything we do is complicated. So the complicated aspect of the things we do comes naturally. So that I learned with time. Yeah.
Yeah. Lawrence, are you wanting to add anything?
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So these are all very good examples based on your real world experience. So based on that, because another thing of our center is about HDR training, right? So in view of all these challenges, the difficulty to scale the misalignment between theory and real world observations. So what do you think can be possibly changed in the HDR training process, right? So what kind of skill sets are the most desirable in your opinion in order to, alleviate these kind of challenges when adopting research into practice?
Yeah, I think tying practical problems to the algorithms, and to the theoretical studies. I think it's always, everything we do can be applied, right? So there is always, an application to a specific algorithm. So, having the right use cases for each, I would say, theoretical learnings. I think it's possible to tie the two together.
Yeah. So for me, I think some of the things are making sure that the research is tied to commercial outcomes, practical benefits, and societal impact. And if you're able to achieve all three of those in your research, you're doing amazing research that's going to really benefit the world. So when you're doing research, I think it's often easy to sort of, go down this path that you think like, okay, I've noticed this area and nobody's really done much research into it before, and I'm going to be able to get into this journal or that journal. But really think about, if you're working with industry, think about what are going to be the commercial outcomes for them. What are the benefits that the organization is looking to achieve from your research? What's the societal impact? If you're I'm sure lots of you in your research are looking to have some sort of societal impact, and also looking at the practical outcomes. So, what is it how is this research going to make a change in the field that you're working in? And I think that's what's really important for me, especially coming from a smaller scale startup working in technology. The commercial outcomes are critical for us because the time that we take to work with the researchers, to train them up, to onboard them, to help assist them along the way, that has cost us. We don't have unlimited time, unfortunately. We have limited resources. So the time that we spent working with the researchers, working with you to help us, means that that's time that we're sort of taking away from other areas of the business. So if you're working with smaller startups or most businesses in general, I'd say, just think about what the commercial outcomes are for them as well, and how your research is going to be benefiting them.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to those
Yeah.
very rounded answers.
Yeah, thanks very much. Now, I think let's simply open up the floor, and let's welcome our PhD students to ask any questions specific to your PhD training, to your internship, or to your experience when trying to put your research into practice. Yeah, so, yeah, please.
Thank you everyone. I just want to ask a question to Julian. How does research in industry differ from research in academia in terms of, like, as you are talking about the goal, timelines, and impact? Impact in the sense, like in academia, we consider more on public aspect as well. But in the industry, how does this impact look like?
Yeah. So there is a commercial aspect, right? We work on algorithms to make money for the company. So our KPIs are very different, right? In an R&D setting, industrial setting, compared to in an academic setting. Academic setting, you have publication, research, teaching, and services, right? In the industry setup, you have the primary KPI is the money you make, right, for the company, or the the number of systems you deploy. In some cases, I worked with Australian Institute of Sports. We've seen this once with Swim in Australia, and in some cases, it's not about the money you make, but it's about public endorsement. This kind, publicity you make for the company. So it can vary, right? There are different sorts of commercial outcomes. You still have services inside the industry, right? That's also a KPI. Develop, the mentor and develop the younger members of the team or external to the team. So there is this aspect, but of course there is no teaching, right? And in terms of publication, we are encouraged to publish. It's important, for us as a company to push papers. Of course, we're not asking for 10 papers a year, right? It's more like 1 or 2, or one a year is enough, right? And we also have internal conferences where we can showcase our research to, partner machine learning teams in the company. So I think there are similarities, but obvious differences.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, thanks a lot, first of all, that was really interesting, and also reiterated some of the things about data quality and technology readiness that we've had in yesterday and today. I just wanted to ask, what are like the main skills that are relevant in your jobs right now that you didn't learn during your academic time that you had to acquire since?
Okay. I think it's stakeholder management, right? Basically, right? We're partnering with very different teams, product teams, they want features out tomorrow. And software teams, right? They want to take their time, right? Because they want to minimize technical debt, right? So, managing, and of course they want algorithms to be ready as soon as possible. And sometimes, you have to communicate. It will take time, and there are uncertainties, right? With respect to the ETA you can provide. So I think, stakeholder management, I didn't have that too much in my academic career, but I think it's different as you grow in academia. You do have to, work with partners to push grant applications and so on. I did a little bit of that, but was not exposed. As I think it's more it's different pace as well. We have daily meetings. I have daily meetings at with partner teams, and it's faster pace because we have to push products. The outcome is maybe it's more short term than long term, right? In academia, you make impact that's my it's just my point of view, right? It's not the truth, right? But in academia, you make impact if you are cited a lot, that you solve a big idea. But industry, you have this short-term bias, right? You need to push the next feature for your customers, and they need to be pleased. And we accept that it's not perfect from the get-go, right? We have many iterations. We have V1, V2, V3, V4, right? So it's different mindset, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, one of the things that we do is, my PhD was a non-technical PhD, and the PhD researchers that we engage with, we use them to sort of help complement the skills that maybe we're lacking in the organization. So, we're working with PhD researchers that are on the cutting edge of technology, doing new things with multimodal AI and so forth, that I don't have previous experience with, as well as engaging with researchers that are doing things in psychosocial hazards, so looking at things with workplace distress, looking at working with PhD researchers from the psychological realm, because that's an area that's, when we're looking at the youth mental health aspects that we look to help with, that's something that we might not have that strong of a basis in. So really reaching out and working with researchers that have this knowledge in areas that we don't have, and they can bring those skills in to help us. And that's what we really tried to do, is understand, okay, we bring these strengths as an organization, but there are these aspects that we need help with. And they're constantly evolving, and the best way for us to be staying ahead of these changing things is to work with researchers such as yourselves to be able to keep us ahead of the curve.
It's a hard question, actually. I was trying to think back to, when did I last study, which was quite some time ago now. I think for me, one of the things that I think is very challenging in my role is the ability to bring stakeholders on the journey, absolutely, and probably the variety of those stakeholders. So, I think, I look after teams who are super technical and are quite happy to spend 4 hours debating the ins and outs of a particular response to something that's happening in the security space, for example, and 10 minutes later I'll be with the CEO. And I think that, that challenge of being able to really flip that conversation around and kind of explain what we're trying to do and why to different stakeholders is really difficult. And it isn't something that you learn in one go. It's something that you sort of cobble together. I think there are some structured courses that can help you in approaches, and I do lean on frameworks when I think about how to communicate with different stakeholders, and whether it's using the frameworks to communicate or I'm thinking about communication frameworks, if that makes sense. So I think there's elements that you draw from a tool bag in a role that, sort of like that I'm in. So I think for me it's also knowing which tool to pick up when is a difficult skill, and that For me, I learned that from watching people I really admire. So it's, who have you seen that operates in a way that resonates with you, like aligns with the values-based approach that you want to take in terms of how you act with other people, but also what skills do they draw on, and can you see, hey, I've got strength there, I want to build on that, and maybe where I'm not as strong, actually, who cares? I'll bring someone else to do that piece, or I do want to invest in it myself. So for me, that's probably one of the skills that's actually really difficult, is that self-awareness of what skills you have and which bits are in your tool bag and that sort of thing as well.
Alice?
So I have a question for Lawrence. I'm very interested in your experience the transition from PhD to an entrepreneur. So I want to ask a question about about commercial value. So as PhD students, we look at the research value by doing literature review, like what contributions we can provide by reading all the related works. And so I want to know, could you please give us some angles as the starting points to think about the potential commercial value of our research, like what kind of, how to brainstorm the commercial value related to our research?
Yeah, definitely, and it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So one of the things that I definitely recommend if you're thinking of pursuing that path is there's lots of different programs that are out there. Okay, so UQ runs a few, such as iLab, and these are great ways. Just start talking about your idea to others, okay, putting it out there and getting feedback. So thinking of ways that you might be able to commercialize your research. One of the things that you need to do is, you'll go through this iteration process, okay? So you'll start out with an idea and you'll think, okay, it's going to go this way, and then the more and more feedback you get, you start getting data points, and you're able to go, okay, I'm getting lots of feedback saying that I should go in this direction. And the more feedback, the more conversations you have, you'll be able to sort of extract knowledge from that and go, okay, I thought where the value I was giving originally was going to be in this area, but I've noticed from all these conversations that I'm having that actually the value is over here. And so the best thing that you can do is just get out there, talk, and speak with others that are in the industry. So speak with professionals. You'll with your research, I'm sure you've already engaged with a number of organizations, a number of individuals that are influential in that space. Speak with them. Say, hey, this is my idea. This is how I'm thinking of commercializing it. Would you buy it? Now, everybody's going to probably say yes, okay? And so then you have to start playing around with that. Like, okay, you have to understand how much of a pain is it. So, understanding how much of a pain it is for them, okay? And does that customer have the money and the ability to buy, okay? Because you don't want you don't want to be searching for the customer. You might know that it's a pain, but maybe it's a pain to the customer as well, but they don't have the money. Or maybe they have the money, but you're not solving the problem that they need. Or they have 30 other problems that they're trying to solve, and yours is number 31. So just the best thing that you can do is start having those conversations and getting as many data points to verify where you're thinking of proceeding is the right direction.
It's a really interesting question, actually, because it applies to non-researchers as well. That's what my teams do day by day. That's what we do in a commercial R&D organisation, is we're like, hey, we've got this idea, or we've got this problem that a customer has or that we have, and we have to come up with a bunch of ideas around how to solve for it. And we try and basically build there's lots of terminology that you can use as different models, but, we try and come up, for example, with a solution tree that, forgotten the lady's name who is well known around the world for developing that model. You know who I'm talking about. it'll come back to me afterwards. But, it's essentially building out, it actually goes back to basic strategy 101, which is build a decision tree around what the options are and then kind of traverse all the paths down it. But I think for me, what's interesting is in a commercial setting is often people don't bother to actually write down their assumptions and things. So a lot of what my job is often working with commercial teams across a business to say, okay, you've got this idea, you've got this need that you need to solve. How are we going to very quickly validate that that problem is real and that the solution that you're proposing is the best solution? There's no one best one, so how do we make it better incrementally? And often it goes back to hypotheses, which is, again, in the business world, people don't typically talk about hypotheses. It's a scientific, sort of based things, but that's what the business world is doing as well. So, look at what's your idea and what are the assumptions underpinning your idea, and therefore develop your hypotheses on that. And that's then how you develop your research, which is, where am I 100% sure that this is true? I've had a bunch of conversations and everyone's told me this is so great. It's not a hypothesis anymore. That's a data point that I can rely on. And so it's about trying to really quickly narrow down those areas where you think there's more risk, whether it's commercial risk, need risk, whatever it is. So it sounds a bit silly, but it's about being a bit structured in doing that. I think one of the challenges we often find is that people fall in love with their own ideas, and they actually don't go through, a relatively rigorous process of testing out those different branches and approaches. And you find that teams who are able to do that really well and really listen to what people are telling them when they're sense checking them, whether it's the customer research or data points, and can do that really quickly, get something out into production and then keep iterating, that's where you get success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just getting that continuous feedback loop. And if you're looking at things to sort of draw out some of these ideas a little bit more, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Lean Startup, but you maybe look at Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and there's a thing called the Business Model Canvas, okay? And that's something that you might want to look at. And then you can start going, okay, who is my market, who is my customer, and start understanding all the different stakeholders that you would need to be engaging with along the way to be able to deliver that value.
I've remembered her name. It's Teresa Torres. She's a researcher, actually a practitioner from Canada. Amazing. Go read the book, Continuous Discovery. It's one of the best books out there on entrepreneurship and how to move forward.
And Rishi?
I want to ask directly, how can we develop the storytelling skills as a researcher? Like, what a good story should look?
Oh, I don't know. What do you like to do that involves stories? Look, I think for me, stories are really important and they're part of who I am, right? Like, that's how I connect with people. And I think that you can do it in both, structured ways and unstructured ways. So I think, one way, you can go and do a bit of a course around storytelling, and there's lots of case studies and courses around how to structure a good, I don't mean story in terms of making up a fable. I mean story in terms of crafting, a narrative around something. It could just be as simple as when you're trying to talk to somebody about something and convince them of something, trying to think of really simple analogies that you can use to explain a technical concept in the real world, and practicing that. So I practice them with my friends. That sounds really dumb, but we get drunk sometimes. Well, I've got some friends. No, we don't always get drunk. But, for example, if I've got something really complicated to do at work, and I do want to bounce it off someone beforehand, and it's really important, I'll actually go out with a couple of friends and bounce it off them. And I'll use the narrative that I'm trying to build out. And, often we'll do it in quite a joking sense. So we'll be silly about it. But out of those silly ideas, often there's something really valuable that comes out of it. So, I might be like, I'm going to pitch this thing and let's use this analogy, and I come up with something rude and I'll use a rude example, but out of that there'll be a funny conversation that actually gives me the glint of a bit of a story that I can anchor that to, or somebody will say, actually, you know what, you're making a joke out of that, but this is what happened to me in real life. So for me it's about crafting a bit of a story and practicing, and that practice can be in any kind of forum. Is that
Thanks very much. Because we are reaching the time to end the session.
One more. There is one.
One more? Yeah, quick one. Yeah.
I saw you raising your hand from the beginning, so.
Sorry for missing that.
Actually, I have two questions. question about different perspective. Julian, you started PhD and then postdoc and then you transitioned to industry. So apart from KPI, what are the other things that maybe it's a shock, maybe it's not, but what are the different things that you did not expect to see in industry? Like with, so you're doing research, you did research in PhD and you're doing research now, but other than KPI, is there like something a PhD graduate should expect if they transition to industry other than the change in KPI? And the second question, which is also the same perspective, different perspective. Again, PhD student graduating, and then they want to commercialize something or go to business. Then they have to change their mindset in a way to align with the company that they're working on. What should that be?
Yeah, so I'll answer the, what's beyond the KPIs, right? Yeah, so I think it's cultural adjustment, right? Yeah, corporate culture is very different. And I worked for, those big companies, IBM, Amazon, AWS. So yeah, there is an adjustment. We have, to report all the time to leadership. Even more so now that I am a manager, right? So there is it's hierarchical structure, right? And you have to accept, criticism even when it's unfair, right? So yeah, there is some, I guess, a corporate, adjustment to the corporate culture, and it comes with benefits as well, right? I mean, there is, I guess, maybe work more closely together as well. But yeah, it's very different. We have all hands as well, where we have to attend talks from VPs and SVPs and so on. So yeah, I think there is this hierarchical structure that you have to accept, and you cannot, you don't only work with your supervisor or your manager, right? Everything you do has to go through reviews, and even the code you push forward, right? There are code reviews, there are science reviews, and you have principal engineers, principal scientists reviewing your work. Sometimes they don't have much, you don't have a lot of context on your work, so you have to do the effort to explain again what is your thought process, and be patient, and they will eventually align, right? If you do good work, they'll always align, but you have this communication effort that's persisting, yeah, and you have to accept that. I think that's the main adjustment I saw as a French, citizen. We don't respect hierarchy that much, right? And I struggled with that at first, but yeah, I mean it's fair, right? It's the way it works, and yeah.
Yeah. Thanks very much. So I think, with that, it is time to conclude today's industry panel discussion session. I think this is a very interactive, informative, and also very insightful 1 hour spent. Thanks to our 3 great panelists. Yeah, please join me in thanking them. Yeah, thank you very much.